In 2025, according to publicly available budget documents, the combined intelligence and national security expenditures of the Five Eyes countries exceeded 120 billion US dollars. Yet in that same year, senior political leaders in Canada and the United Kingdom publicly explored warmer trade and diplomatic language toward China. On the surface, these gestures suggested flexibility, a willingness to reset relations. Beneath the surface, however, the intelligence architecture binding these countries together remained unchanged. The contradiction is subtle but persistent. Trade policy can pivot in months, diplomatic tone can reset in weeks, but intelligence alignment often remains fixed for decades. The question is not why these resets happen, but why they so rarely alter the deeper system underneath. Most people understand the Five Eyes as a club, a tight-knit alliance of English-speaking democracies, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States, sharing intelligence because of shared values and mutual trust. In this view, alignment is voluntary, political. If national interests change, cooperation can be recalibrated. If trade relationships evolve, intelligence relationships might follow. This explanation feels logical. After all, alliances are formed by governments, and governments change. But this understanding is incomplete because it treats intelligence sharing as a policy choice rather than an infrastructure. To understand why diplomatic resets with China rarely alter intelligence alignment, it helps to begin not with a prime minister or a president, but with an analyst. Picture a mid-career intelligence officer in Ottawa, Cheltenham, or Canberra. Their day does not begin with foreign policy speeches or trade negotiations. It begins with systems, classified databases built decades ago, shared technical standards, secure fiber links, common analytic taxonomies, access permissions negotiated long before they joined the service. According to reporting by the Financial Times and Reuters, much of the Five Eyes operational integration occurs below the level of political oversight, embedded in software, procurement contracts, and career pathways. This analyst does not choose alignment. They inherit it. The Five Eyes system began accumulating quietly in the aftermath of World War II. The UKUSA Agreement, formalized in 1946, was not designed as a geopolitical statement, but as a technical solution. Britain and the United States faced a problem. Intercepted signals were growing faster than any single country could process. Pooling collection and analysis was efficient. Canada joined soon after, followed by Australia and New Zealand. What accumulated first was not ideology, but infrastructure. Shared listening posts, division of labor by geography, common encryption standards. According to declassified archives cited by RAND and the National Security Archive, by the 1960s, the alliance had already divided global signals coverage into semi-exclusive zones, locking in long-term dependence. Over time, accumulation became entrenchment. Joint facilities were built that no single country could easily replicate alone. Pine Gap in Australia, for example, became a critical node for satellite intelligence, operated jointly by the US and Australia. GCHQ's Cheltenham headquarters evolved into one of the largest intelligence analysis centers in Europe, deeply integrated with US systems. According to UK National Audit Office figures, a significant share of GCHQ's capital investment is tied to interoperable systems with US agencies. These are not plug-and-play relationships. They are more like shared arteries. You can change the political language flowing through them, but rerouting them entirely would require surgery. As entrenchment deepened, leverage emerged. Intelligence alignment began shaping foreign policy constraints rather than responding to them. Access to shared intelligence came with expectations, compatible legal frameworks, aligned threat assessments, and limits on technology partnerships deemed risky by the group. This is where China enters the picture. According to reporting by Reuters and the Wall Street Journal, Five Eyes intelligence agencies have consistently expressed concern about Chinese involvement in telecommunications, infrastructure, data centers, and advanced research partnerships. These concerns are not always public, but they are institutionalized. They travel through classified assessments, procurement guidelines, and security clearances. A government can sign a trade memorandum with Beijing, But if its intelligence agencies assess certain technologies as compromised, the constraints quietly reassert themselves. Consider the case of a telecommunications firm bidding to supply 5G equipment across multiple Five Eyes countries. On paper, the contracts seem like standard commercial transactions. But behind the scenes, analysts assess encryption vulnerabilities, potential data leaks, and supply chain dependencies. By the time ministers discuss approvals, the parameters are largely set. Intelligence alignment has already dictated what is permissible. This invisible hand shapes trade subtly but persistently. The pattern is visible in numbers. According to OECD and national budget data, defense and intelligence spending among Five Eyes countries has grown steadily over the past 2 decades, even as trade with China expanded dramatically. Australia's trade with China, for instance, accounted for more than 30% of its total exports at its peak, according to Australian government statistics cited by the IMF. Yet Australia simultaneously deepened its intelligence integration with the United States. The two tracks did not converge. They ran in parallel, governed by different logics. Trade followed markets. Intelligence followed architecture. This mechanism repeats across time and geography. During the Cold War, Western European countries pursued détente and trade with the Soviet Union while remaining embedded in NATO intelligence structures. According to declassified NATO records analyzed by Brookings, intelligence sharing remained tightly controlled even as pipelines were built and commercial exchanges expanded. More recently, several European states increased economic engagement with China through infrastructure investment, while quietly maintaining intelligence restrictions on Chinese technology firms. The pattern is consistent. Economic openness operates on shorter cycles, while intelligence alignment operates on longer ones. To visualize the structure, think of intelligence as a network of pipelines. Each country is a node. Political decisions flow through these pipes, but the pipes themselves were laid decades ago. Changing the route requires breaking concrete, replacing conduits, retraining personnel. You can repaint the exterior, change the labels, add new valves, but the main structure persists. In contrast, trade flows are like water over the surface, easy to redirect, temporary, responsive. The reason lies in where intelligence systems sit within the state. Trade ministries negotiate, foreign ministries signal, intelligence agencies endure. Their incentives reward continuity, risk aversion, and long memory. According to former intelligence officials interviewed by the Financial Times, assessments are often cumulative, layering years of data rather than reacting to diplomatic gestures. Once a country or technology is categorized as a long-term counterintelligence risk, that classification becomes sticky. It shapes training, budgets, and internal doctrine. Reversing it is costly, not politically, but organizationally. There is also a quieter economic dimension. Intelligence sharing lowers transaction costs within the alliance. It reduces uncertainty for defense contractors, technology firms, and financial institutions operating across Five Eyes jurisdictions. According to studies by the Council on Foreign Relations, shared security assessments help align export controls, investment screening, and research safeguards. This creates a form of invisible market integration. Companies know which technologies will face fewer barriers within the network. Universities understand which partnerships are encouraged and which are discouraged. Over time, capital, talent, and innovation flow along these channels, reinforcing the system. This produces a strategic irony. Countries like Canada and the UK may seek diplomatic resets with China to diversify trade or manage economic risk. Yet the very intelligence alignment that limits Chinese technological penetration also strengthens intra-Five Eyes economic ties. According to World Bank data, investment flows among Five Eyes countries remain disproportionately high relative to their share of global GDP. Intelligence alignment, though rarely discussed in economic terms, quietly shapes comparative advantage. The consequences are not dramatic, but they are persistent. Trade negotiations with China face ceilings defined not by tariffs, but by trust thresholds embedded in security reviews. Infrastructure projects encounter delays not because of public opposition, but because of classified risk assessments. Policy flexibility narrows at the margins. According to IMF analysis, policy uncertainty can reduce long-term investment even in the absence of formal restrictions. In this sense, intelligence alignment acts like a low-pressure valve. It does not block flows outright, it modulates them. Imagine a Canadian university planning a joint research program in quantum computing with a Chinese counterpart. Officially, approval is a bureaucratic process. In reality, intelligence assessments may quietly restrict data sharing or prohibit certain labs from participating. The program might go ahead with limitations that aren't visible to the public, shaping the pace and scope of scientific collaboration. Changing this system is difficult because it would require unwinding decades of accumulation. New intelligence architectures would need to be built, legal frameworks rewritten, personnel retrained. According to RAND estimates, developing independent, sovereign intelligence capabilities comparable to Five Eyes integration would require tens of billions of dollars and many years of institutional learning. Few governments are willing to bear that cost, especially when the existing system continues to deliver perceived security benefits. As geopolitical competition intensifies, the pressure on this architecture increases. Emerging technologies blur the line between civilian and military, commercial and strategic. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and data infrastructure become both economic assets and intelligence vectors. According to the OECD, more than 60% of advanced economies now treat data governance as a national security issue. In such an environment, intelligence alignment becomes even more central, not less. And yet the system remains largely invisible to the public. It does not announce itself. It does not campaign. It persists. Diplomatic language will continue to evolve. Trade relationships will ebb and flow. New leaders will promise resets, rebalances, and renewals. Beneath these shifts, the Five Eyes intelligence system will continue to operate as it has for decades, a dense network of shared standards, expectations, and constraints. The unresolved question is not whether this alignment will break, but how it will adapt. Can an intelligence architecture built for signals interception in the mid-20th century govern data-driven economies in the 21st? Can trade diversification coexist with deep security integration indefinitely? Or will the quiet pressures accumulate to the point where the system itself must be renegotiated? For now, the architecture holds. Not because of ideology or loyalty or fear, but because systems once built tend to shape the choices made within them. And in the world of intelligence, the most powerful forces are often the ones that operate without headlines.